Welcome. You're at home with Jim and Joy, and we're thrilled and delighted that you have invited us into your home. Well, you know that you are an important part of the EWTN family here at Home with Jim and Joy, and we want to hear from you. So send us an email, jimandjoy@ewtn.com. Well, darling, today we have wonderful guests.
I'm very excited about the show.
Yeah, we have Heartbeat International. Now, I know that you have heard us share about Heartbeat just because of our pregnancy medical center here, Her Choice in Birmingham, Alabama. Well, today we're going to have the board chairman, and her name is Peggy Hartshorn, and also the president of Heartbeat International, Jor-el Godsey. And they're going to be our guests today, telling us about this life-saving, unbelievable ministry that is worldwide, having an impact all over the world, restoring the lives of women, saving babies, and doing an unbelievable work of love. Yeah. That's the pro-life movement.
People are going to be greatly encouraged today. I mean, there's recently bad news with the Supreme Court decision in Texas, you know, striking down regulations to help women to really get the medical care they need and so on. And people are saying, you know, what's going on? What can we do? You can save someone's life today. You can bring hope to a woman who feels so alone today in a crisis pregnancy. You could bring hope and healing to someone, man or woman, who's experienced abortion and can get healing. You can help with housing. There's so many things you could do, and that's what Heartbeat International does. Joy, a particular point that I wanted to make, in our own center, which is an affiliate of Heartbeat, we're associated with that umbrella group, we always speak about when somebody comes in who's in a crisis pregnancy, they're so disillusioned and many times abandoned and just so alone. And we always speak about having the conversation. Thank God we can have a conversation that they've come to us instead of an abortion mill and had the conversation there. And we just rejoice over that. And that's what Heartbeat provides in thousands of places, where someone who's disillusioned, who is frightened, doesn't know what the resources are, maybe been getting bad counsel, somehow comes in through our reaching out to them, or somebody's told them, or they just kind of wander in, or mistake us maybe for an abortion center. If we could just have the conversation with someone in this situation and listen and love them and empathize with them and not be quick to jump in, even with a solution, but just listen and pray and land the plane where it needs to be landed. That plane of love, that plane of you're not alone, that plane of you're part of a community, even though this country believes in abortion through all 9 months, maybe some other people are speaking to you about that. You have a whole community. That conversation of every resource for you to have this child will be made available to you. That conversation of hope, and that we're not going anyplace. We usually win that conversation versus abortion about 80% of the time. If we could just have the conversation. And Heartbeat International trains people to have that conversation at crisis pregnancy centers. You out there, they can train you how to do that right where you are, because if you haven't had the conversation, you're going to have the conversation.
Right, because you are having the conversation, because, you know, there are laws that are happening, there's politically, there's a conversation to be had, just saying, well, what do you do when a girl is in an unplanned pregnancy? And the beautiful thing that Heartbeat does is it equips normal, ordinary people like me to do the work of the ministry. To equips us to be the people that I didn't know I was called to this, you know, but I just showed up and I said, now I need training, now I need help, and they train you and equip you and aid you in every way to hit on all cylinders, to have a healthy center where you can have women, young men come in, families in crisis, because, you know, being in an unplanned pregnancy, sometimes that's just one of many problems.
Right. Wherever you are, you might not be in a pregnancy help center, but you can be trained to have the conversation so that you're not in a panic when your child comes to you, a grandchild comes to you, somebody has a conversation, that they're in a crisis pregnancy or that they've had an abortion. What do I say? What do I do? Where is the help? Where do I go?
Or I would like to do adoption. Maybe I'm in an unplanned pregnancy and I want to place my baby for adoption. Or I'm a young couple and maybe I want to adopt a child. And they contact the pregnancy help center so they can say, help us to do this work. How do I do this? And it's an outstanding, wonderful ministry.
A number you need to know is 1-800-712-HELP. So if you're ever in a situation like this, you just call that number or go to optionline.org, optionline.org. This is all sponsored by Heartbeat International. That's our show today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. A lot more to come. Be encouraged. You are not alone. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you're an important part of the family, and we would love to hear from you. So send us an email, jimandjoy@ewtn.com, and hopefully we can answer your question right here on the air. Well, today we have two really strong, unbelievable people in the pro-life movement, and they are Peggy Hartshorn and Jor-el Godsey. And Peggy is the board chairman of Heartbeat International, and Jor-el is the new president of Heartbeat International. I was at the conference when I saw you pass that baton, the mantle, and you went like this, Jor-el. Oh, no, you said, yes, Lord. No, it was so beautiful. So that was a beautiful transition of everything that you do. So you've been involved for 40 years and you 30, but tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, where you came from and how you got involved.
Well, that's a lot, and I'll try to keep it short. My husband and I have been married for 47 years, my husband Mike, and we have 2 children that were adopted as infants and 5 grandchildren. And as I think back on my life, it's amazing how Mike and I, our life, we were only married a few years before the 1973 Supreme Court decision, Roe v. Wade, which was handed down on January 22nd. And I was getting a graduate degree at Ohio State University. Mike had just finished law school. And we were a young married couple, hoping to have children, starting out, Mike in his first law job. I was finishing up, hoping to be a college English teacher. Thought we knew what our life was going to be like. And then I sometimes compare this to St. Paul getting knocked off his horse, but I know it's not in that same category exactly. But I was driving up to Ohio State on High Street in Columbus, Ohio, listening to the radio and listening to NPR actually. And they had a fairly lengthy report on the fact that January 22nd, that was the day the Supreme Court had just handed down the decision Roe v. Wade. And their rendition of that was abortion is now legal in the United States throughout the pregnancy. All the laws restricting abortion had been declared unconstitutional. And I really could not believe it was happening. I just could not believe it was happening. Didn't have cell phones in those days, but as soon as I got to a phone, I called my husband and I said, go to the law library. They must have this decision wrong. You know, they can't be right. This can't have happened in our country. And even though I had gone to college in California, which as you know was one of the first states to legalize abortion in 1978, actually 1968, sorry. And so I knew about abortion. I knew that it existed. I knew there were efforts to make it legal in every state, but I couldn't believe. To me, it was against everything I grew up believing in. I was a cradle Catholic. I just knew that abortion was wrong. I don't even remember when I first heard about it, but it struck something instinctively in me, spiritually, and also patriotically. This is my country. You know, we stand on the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So to make a long story short, it was true, and I looked up I looked up Right to Life in the telephone book. I knew there was such a group as Right to Life and said, my husband and I want to volunteer. So that took us from 1973 to the present time. God has just opened up door after door after door for us. Ways to be involved. And that's an encouraging thing, I think, for anyone listening out there who might say, I know abortion is a horrible thing, or I want to get involved, but what do I do? Well, you just take the first step. And then God will open up more and more doors for you to be involved. So we started as a young couple housing pregnant girls in our home, and then found out that we couldn't have our own biological children. We were able to adopt. That was another door that opened. So, and then we opened a pregnancy center, and then I got involved in Heartbeat International and started doing the work on a larger scale, not just in our city, Columbus, Ohio, but then, as Jor-el knows, Jor-el and I both traveled around the world now doing this work. Who would have ever thought back in 1973 that that's what God would do? So it was just kind of a little yes, and God took it from there.
That's beautiful. Jor-el, share with us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. Well, my path is a little different. I pretty much was pro-choice by default. It's what you were as a kid growing up in the late 70s after this really had become a reality in our nation, and got involved outside of wedlock and ended up making that decision. And while it was just what you did, at least for the generation that I was stepping into, it was a short time after that that I began to get connected with church, began to really open my heart to what God was doing in my life and those around me. And it was at that time that I became really convicted about this issue, sitting in church, hearing a different message than I had ever heard before, and was penetrated. And so I jumped in both feet, got involved in really being out on the sidewalks and getting arrested. And the next thing I know, I found this little tiny pregnancy center. I didn't even know what it was. And I walked into it and happened to put a couple pieces together, had some friends who were electricians. They needed some electricians. I made that happen. Next call I got was, hey, you demonstrated all the requirements, the two important requirements of being a board member. You bring resources to the center and you're breathing. And so
And you have friends.
That's right. And so I had the privilege of joining the board at that time, and as a requirement of being on the board, I had to go through a training about how to counsel in crisis, and I resisted that. I was a guy who I was never going to do that, but I did that, and praise God I did, because it was in that training I went to, dragging my feet, digging my heels in, sat behind a young lady that weekend, and then the next weekend, and then a year later we went on our first date, and a year later we were married. So this is not just something I've jumped into personally, but it's something that really God used to bring my family together now that we celebrate, and I appreciate her passion for this movement. She lets me do this, go around the world with Peggy and others, and really participate in the joy of what it is to be part of the life-affirming movement.
Amen. Well, why don't you share with us, as the new president, the mission of Heartbeat International? You know, what is it about?
Well, and it is a privilege to step in very big shoes, and can't walk in those, but I walk in my own. It is a privilege to be a part of something that really was called into existence, just like the pregnancy help movement was called into existence by the Holy Spirit. The pregnancy help movement then turned and called into existence something which is now Heartbeat International. They said those at the time, and back 46 years ago now, said we need something that ties us together, connects us together, and that's what Heartbeat International is, and that's what I've joined and become a part of and really celebrate, because it's a wonder to go around the entire world, whether it's Birmingham or it's Britain or it's Arizona or Australia, and see different people doing this work, answering the very same question the Holy Spirit asks. How do we respond to this issue in our community? And Heartbeat's role and goal is to serve them in that, to create an environment that connects them, equips them, encourages them, and envisions them for not just the work and the heart that they are doing, but also how can we do it better? How can we do it more? There are more lives to touch, more hearts to save, more families that need to be impacted by a life choice than a different decision.
You know, one of the themes that really comes through Heartbeat in terms of your own heart is this whole idea of the truth of women being so alone, so uninformed, that they can make a terrible choice. This is also true, I guess, for the pro-life community, and you saw this with Heartbeat, that a lot in the pro-life community are alone. We feel alone, or we're doing this thing, and we feel all alone and isolated. So is that one of the keys for Heartbeat, to say, let's not be like those women who are so alone, so isolated, making a bad choice? Why don't we come together? Did you reach out to these other centers? How did you find out about them? Did they come to you? How did this begin to connect?
Well, all of the above, in a sense. It's something that people sought, that they looked for, because they said, I want to do this. Who can I go to and talk to? Well, that's Heartbeat. We counted just the other day. Our staff has gone through some changes that we've had, and we've added some players to our mix, and we counted together. We have over 400 years of cumulative experience among our 44 staff members and team members who have been working in this movement over many, many years.
Right.
And there's so much exciting things going on there. As you mentioned, Jim, it's a really powerful point, is sometimes when we get into this work, and I know you've experienced this personally here in Birmingham and others have done in their communities, is you can get a sense that you're under attack. You feel like everything is aligned against you, at least what the world has. Of course, God's aligned with us, and God and us are always a majority, right? So, but what happens is you can often get this bunker mentality, feeling alone, like no one really understands what I'm going through.
Right.
And you were with us. We just celebrated our 46th annual conference in Atlanta, and you can see it. People suddenly, like, you could feel this weight lifted, because they're like, oh, there are other people who get me, who understand, who are living what I'm living and understand what I'm doing. And there's nothing like that community, because that's what Christ calls us to, is really the community. We are together. We're an army, in a sense, an army who's armed with love, as Peggy likes to say.
And it really is true, because, when you're there and you see everybody and you hear everybody, the directors, and say, oh yeah, I tried that. Oh yeah, I did that. Oh, that doesn't work. Because you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And you have 400 years of people with experience, right? Just to say, you can try that, but just tell you what experience has shown us. That doesn't work. It's not going to fly, no matter how much you put behind that thing. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so when you get in a room, or you get in a network area, or you go into a classroom and you're being discipled by someone who's been there, done that, and with other directors or with other counselors, and you're like, I'm not alone, and it's okay.
Right.
And someone else is bearing the same cross that I'm bearing.
The community is critical. I often mention burnout and chill out. And there's a lot of that, in this movement.
Right.
I mean, you just burn out. Once you understand the reality of what's happening to these lives, to these women who are being exploited, to the lack of involvement by many people, you burn out, or you just get cold and you chill out. So, I think Heartbeat really provides, like you said, that coming together, that community, that sharing. You can cry with one another, pray for one another. It really builds you up.
Absolutely. And Jim, thank you for touching on that, because it's something we do every morning at Heartbeat, is we meet together as a team, and we have a time of prayer, and we always are praying for that very thing, that the Lord will just surround his people, those that he's called into this work, with his love, his power, his presence.
Amen. Peggy, what's, from your perspective, you're not the founder of Heartbeat, but you were doing the same works at the beginning, then spoke with some people that may have been under another name that became Heartbeat or something, as I remember from your book.
Our original name was Alternatives to Abortion.
Okay. So I've heard that you're not the foundress, but you're the fabric. The fabric. And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you.
What comes to mind for you if I said, I'm going to say it, what's the heartbeat of Heartbeat? And what's the heartbeat of it?
I was thinking, as you were talking, two words came to mind. One is relationship. We're all about relationship.
Wow.
And in fact, one of the things we love to say is the best alternative to abortion is another person. So that's what Heartbeat is all about, making sure that the people that God has called to provide the love and the help and support can be connected to the people who need it at the point that they need it. So it's the relationship, between those in need and those that God's called to give, that we facilitate.
Yes.
You know, we facilitate that. And we can talk a little bit later about our option line, about our trainings, more specifically about our travels and how we do this training. But it's all about putting God's people together when they need it. And like you mentioned, it's not just the client, the woman coming into the pregnancy center or calling the option line who needs to be connected to another loving person. It's also those of us doing the work that need to be connected with each other, because it's through us that, you know, we are the hands and feet of the Lord, and that's what she needs. She needs love. That was the other word that came to mind as we started talking. Relationship and love, and of course they go together because there is no love without relationship. And when we say we're made in the image and likeness of God, part of that is that we want to share with women. You and your baby are made in the image and likeness of God. Part of that is the relationship, you know, the three persons making up one God. God created us for relationship and to be in relationship. You know, the mother with the child, the father with the child, the father with the mother, the family together. You know, those of us that God has called to minister to her when she's feeling so alone and afraid. So it's the love, really, also that we're all about. Being God's love, reflecting God's love, approaching her, offering love, you know, offering love, allowing her to respond. You know, and just like you said in the beginning, Jim, it was beautiful as you talked about listening. You know, just listening to her story.
Right.
Just being there for her.
You speak about the love approach.
That's our basic training.
Okay. Can you just hit on the points of that?
Yes, well, we call it the love approach because it is based on 1 Corinthians 13, sometimes called St. Paul's hymn to love. Love is patient. Love is kind. You know, love does not hold grudges. Love never fails, you know, and if you don't have love, you sound like a clanging gong, you know, and a noisy cymbal. And that's not the way we want to sound to the people that God sends to us. We need to approach them in that kind of a loving way, to be there for them. Love never fails. But we also call it the love approach because the 4 steps can spell out the word love. First one is L, listen and learn. We listen. We need to hear her story. We try to encourage her, you know, to finally talk about herself. Tell us how she feels, what she's thinking, what the pressures are on her. You know, what does she want? And you know, there are lots of studies that confirm this. Women do not want to have an abortion.
Right.
And in fact, Frederica Matthews Green, one of the writers on post-abortion, said women choose abortion like an animal trapped in a trap, whose leg is trapped in a trap, gnaws off his leg to free himself.
Yes.
That's how women want an abortion. And so when they're allowed to tell their story, we listen, we really draw them out. And we form that bond, that relationship with her. And then we can talk about her options. She'll listen to us after we've listened to her. That's the O step. Open options. And she's thinking maybe abortion is her only option. But we want to let her know all the facts about abortion. What about that option? What is it? What are the effects? But then what about her parenting options? And parenting could be single parenting, could possibly involve marriage, could possibly involve choosing a parenting plan that involves adoption, choosing parents. How workable is that? What resources are available? And then the V step, a new vision and value. Who is she as a child of God? Jesus loves her. You know, this is the first day of the rest of her life. She can do it. God's grace is sufficient. Those kinds of visions and messages of encouragement she needs to have. And then the E is extend and empower. How can we provide the resources and the connection with her, continuing and perhaps gathering up resources in the community to make sure that she is empowered to make a positive choice.
Right.
That's the love approach.
Well, you did a great job. We're
Thank
going
you.
to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have more for you to learn, more for you to love, and more for you to understand about Heartbeat International. Don't go away. We'll be right back. welcome back. Well, remember, we want you to be a part of our show. So you can send us an email, jimandjoy@ewtn.com, and hopefully we will use your question on the air. Well, you know, EWTN Religious Catalog has a new compilation of Mother Angelica's straightforward solutions to life's puzzling problems, put together in book form with the help of Christine Allison. And it's called Mother Angelica's Answers, Not Promises. And you can order this great book just by going to EWTNRC.com or give them a jingle, 1-800-854-6316. It's item number 80046, and you might want to take that on your summer vacation. It would be a great read.
Well, we're back, and such an important topic and reality, help centers, Heartbeat International. So thousands, how many centers are there? What type of centers are there? You know, when we think of a center, we think of our particular center, and I do want to address that so people can know what's happening there. But there are other kinds of centers too.
Certainly.
And so please tell us how many and what's going on in them.
Well, in the Heartbeat world, we have more than 2,000 affiliates. About 1,300 of those are in the U.S. alone, and then the rest are in 49 or 50 different countries all over the world. Now, that's just the ones that are connected with Heartbeat. We think around 5,000 to 6,000 worldwide. In the U.S., we count over 2,600 pregnancy help centers with this kind of intervention model where they're trying to intervene in someone's challenging situation. Literally a life and death decision could be on the line, and that's the U.S. factor. But there are many outside of the U.S. There needs to be more because, frankly, as you know this statistic that there's 1 million abortions in the U.S. every year alone. Well, there are 50 million abortions worldwide. So if you think globally, we represent a very small number according to the larger number, but we represent a very healthy number in the response. And as you guys know, we had the privilege back in about the mid-90s of surpassing the number of abortion providers.
Right.
And we celebrated, we thought that was awesome. Now, of course, they're funded to the tune of billions of dollars. It's a billion-dollar industry, and we are blessed by God's generosity through God's people. But that growth has continued, and their growth has continued to decline. So now we nearly have in the U.S. alone 5 times as many pregnancy help locations as there are standalone abortion providers, and we celebrate that.
And that is good news.
Yes. Yes,
you know,
it is.
because if a girl is in an unplanned pregnancy and she has a greater opportunity to say, let me get help, and the help that I choose to seek may be life and not abortion, because this culture of death is selling her abortion.
Yes, they are.
And so, we have 5 times greater a chance to say, here you are, there is help for you, and come in, have the conversation, and break it down. What would happen when, what would it look like when a girl is in an unplanned pregnancy, and maybe she just missed her cycle, and she's got lots of options out there. Right. And she's hearing the voices of her friends, maybe her family, but then someone says, why don't you call this pregnancy resource center, this pregnancy help center that's down the street? What would it look like for her?
Well, that's a great question, Joy, because a lot of times I think people do fear. They probably have in mind what would it be like to go in for an abortion, but they might think, well, I don't know, what would a pregnancy help center be like? Well, it's a place that's very confidential, very safe. When she comes in, and the center could be located in a mall, let's say, in a strip mall, could be located in a house. It could be located in an office building. It could look like a doctor's office, perhaps. A lot of pregnancy help centers are actually providing medical services. So it depends on where she is, what that place might look like. But when she comes in, she would be welcomed. One of the things that girls tell us after they've come to a pregnancy center is, I just felt so welcome. I felt, I had been perhaps to an abortion clinic, and many of them have, and it felt cold, and I felt judged, and it was sterile, and they weren't friendly. And
Or it was
then-
not sterile.
Yes,
It was
probably.
filtered.
It looked
Yeah.
it looked sterile. Maybe it looked bare. She comes to a pregnancy center. She says it was so friendly. The people were so nice to me. You know, they made me feel comfortable right away. You know, and we would bring a girl into a private, confidential room where she would meet in comfortable furniture like we have here with one of the trained consultants or helpers in that center. If it's a pregnancy help medical clinic, there might be a nurse there or a medical worker she might meet with first. But then we just get some basic information, you know, her name. Some girls don't like to give their actual name, that's fine. But we gather a little bit of information, and usually most girls are pretty open because that's common when you go into a doctor's office, for instance. And then we ask her, okay, you think you may be pregnant. How are you feeling about that? Would you tell me a little bit about how you're feeling? And we give her a chance to start telling her story. Now, if she hasn't had a pregnancy test, you know, we will actually do a pregnancy test. We'll have her go into a separate room, provide a urine sample for us to do the pregnancy test. And then when we come back, we can let her know what the test results were. Was it positive? Was it negative? And actually, early detection pregnancy tests are excellent today. But we use in pregnancy center lab quality pregnancy tests. We've actually had girls come into pregnancy centers because they maybe have done a home test, but they don't know whether it's accurate.
Right.
They've gotten it at the drugstore. They don't know whether to believe the results. They can be assured when they come into a pregnancy center, we're using lab quality pregnancy tests, and we can help
Free of
interpret
charge.
free of charge.
Free of charge.
Absolutely.
Operative word.
That's right.
Absolutely. Help interpret the results. And then, now that is only an indication of pregnancy. It's not a diagnosis. But in our pregnancy help centers that are medical clinics, we can actually then diagnose the pregnancy through an ultrasound. If she'd like to, she can have an ultrasound examination, sonogram. Medical personnel do those kinds of exams, trained medical personnel. The person she talked to when she came in could possibly be a medical person, or it might be a person like you or me, Joy, who is a lay person, but we've been well trained in the love approach so that we know how to be non-judgmental. We know how to listen and learn. We're there for her. So if she can stay for the ultrasound, that could be provided that day. We could make an appointment for her at another time. But while she's there, we'll get to know her and get to know her story in a very confidential way. We'll ask her questions. You know, like I said, how are you feeling about it? Who knows about this? Have you told your boyfriend? Have you told your parents? What are they saying to you? Are you feeling alone? Do you have any resources? What do you want to do? All right, we want to know everything about her that we can possibly find out. And then if she can stay and hear more about her options, that's what we want to go over with her. Give her lots of information. Some pregnancy centers have brochures they can share. Some have videos they can show her. We ask her permission before we show her anything that might be disturbing. You know, we want to make sure she has all the facts, but we want to respect her and not try to foist anything on her. Certainly, we want her to have all the information, though, that she needs so she can ask us questions. And while she's there, then we'll share, as I mentioned, new vision, we'll encourage her, and then we'll share practical resources. You know, do you need housing? Will be part of the network, as we mentioned earlier. Pregnancy help includes not just centers that can provide crisis intervention, like I was mentioning in this example, but we have part of our network maternity homes, nonprofit adoption agencies, some professional social services as well that we can refer her to for additional services. Pregnancy help centers usually know their communities backwards and forwards. They know what kind of help is available right there in that community, probably also at no charge. So they can connect her to what she needs.
Right.
If the father of the child is in the picture, we like to talk to him. Bring him in at this point. How is he feeling about it? It's amazing to me how many girls think that their boyfriend or the father of the child is going to want them to have an abortion. That because they've told him they're pregnant and he says, whatever you want to do, I'll support you.
Right.
Most girls read that as, he just abandoned me. He's not going to help me. All right, so when we get the boyfriend in, sometimes we ask him, okay, how are you feeling about this? I'll never forget it, one of my first cases of counseling with a boyfriend, consulting with a boyfriend. And he said, well, I would really like for her to have this baby. And she was stunned. She had no idea, because he thought the most appropriate thing to say was, whatever you want to do, I'll support you. Girls really need the help and support of the father of the child.
Right. And that's the beauty of coming into centers where they can have the conversation. Of course, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't have that conversation.
No, they're not
But some nice
communicating.
lady like you, or a good, fine gentleman like you, is going to ask them that question.
Right.
And it's like, well, I didn't know you felt like that.
Exactly.
You know, that's the beauty of coming in and having the conversations.
Right.
I'm going to go straight to an email. It says, my 2 girls are in high school, and they told me recently that many of their friends are sexually active, which was a surprise to me, especially because they attend a Catholic school. Our youth was so exposed to sexuality that there seems to be no way to help guard their chastity. Does your organization offer pre-abortion counseling, or can you advise how parents can bring up this topic without judging our teenagers? Thank you, and this is Florence from North Carolina.
Any thoughts about that?
Certainly. Well, I'll let Peggy speak to the opportunity right there in that moment, but let me talk about the movement as a whole. This is a very common thing that comes up in the centers themselves, that they take the moment. For instance, many people actually walk into the centers and they're not pregnant, but they are sexually active. They know what they were doing, and here we are at the center, and they think that they are, and then fortunately for them, they're able to find out at that moment that they're not pregnant. But that's a great moment to introduce this very dynamic about, hey, let's talk about your relationships, because it is all about relationship, but really it's all about healthy relationships, which I know is what you guys are constantly talking about. And it's what we want to talk about as well. And many centers have active opportunity to go into local schools, local private schools, Catholic schools, even some public schools will allow them to go in. Now, there are certain things that they will go in and they maybe can't talk about, that they might be able to talk freely at the religious school, but they go in and talk about the values of keeping oneself protected from unhealthy relationships, relationships where they will be used and not necessarily loved. You know, the girl goes in and seeks to be loved, and she gives herself to get love. He comes to the relationship, and he gives love in order to get something else. And so you have these dynamics that are very difficult for them. So many centers understand that far better to build the fence at the top of the cliff than the hospital at the bottom, right? So they are trying to get into the community, whether it's through youth groups, it's through schools, it's through any opportunity that they can, to speak the message of sexual integrity, speak the message of how you can avoid ever having to make these kind of decisions. And that's by making good choices before you find yourself faced with a very difficult choice of abortion.
Yeah. Well, the primary place, of course, is with the parents to teach. And especially in Catholic or Christian schools, there could be some good chastity teaching of the catechism. At our center, what we found is we really invite Catholic churches to have their confirmation classes come before they make confirmation. So we give them a pizza, through our center, we give them a pizza party, and then we teach them about chastity, modesty, about what we do here. We divide the boys and girls up. Joy takes the girls, I take the guys. We do speak about abortion, the consequences of not being chaste. We speak about forgiveness. And most of the parents are very, very grateful, very thankful, because it really puts it in a real context and saying, you know, 40% of your generation or so, you know, have been aborted. You know, 30% of your generation. Well, what? You're a survivor. You're known as a survivor. When I was in my mother's womb, I was a person. You're in your mother's womb. You're not a person. And well, what are you talking about? And then they want to really engage this thing and get involved. So really having them down to our center has been a great thing. We have youth groups, evangelical groups, Pentecostal groups, young adult groups, and it really puts it in context.
There's one thing I'd like to add there. This is kind of the seeds for a book that I'm hoping to write, but right now we have in a brochure form that is downloadable. On our website, which is heartbeatinternational.org, something called 10 Things 10 things you can say and do to make abortion unwanted now and unthinkable in future generations. And it has things that this mom can do.
That's good.
And her friends can do with their children to make sure that we're speaking to them the kinds of things they need to hear before they get sexually active, or if they are sexually active, before they get pregnant or think they're pregnant and head toward an abortion. And one of the things that I have in this 10 things that I finally realized, I hear in what this mother's saying, she hates to bring up something perhaps assuming that would the daughter assume that she's going to be sexually active if the mother starts talking about this? How do we talk to our children and not give them mixed messages? And we certainly don't want to give them mixed messages. We want them to know what our strong values are, because all the studies do show that girls are still most impacted by the values of their parents. All right, so we want them to know what our values are. But one of the things I decided to do with my children as they were growing up was to say to them, there's nothing you can ever say or do that would make me stop loving you.
Right.
That's right.
There's nothing you could ever say or do that will make me stop loving you. Because I was so sad of all the girls we were seeing in our pregnancy center in Columbus, Ohio, who were going to Catholic schools, going to religious schools, some whose parents were pastors, and who were saying, but I'm going to have an abortion.
Right, because I'm so afraid to tell my mother.
I could never let them know that I was sexually active.
Right.
Okay, so they need to come to us. They need to come to us as parents. So we have to let them know that that's not going to stop my love for you, just like, of course, it would never stop God's love for us.
Right.
So anyway, that I hear that in that mother's voice, or that mother's question. How can I talk to my child, my young daughter, and not give her the mixed messages?
Heartbeat International, here to help women in crisis pregnancy, here to help train you to be an articulate spokesperson for the gospel of life. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, you know, you are an important part of our EWTN family, and we would love to have you join us live on At Home. You could meet us. We're real live people. And you could meet our wonderful guests that we have for you each and every week. All you have to do is contact the EWTN Pilgrimage Department, and you would do that by emailing at pilgrimages@EWTN.com, or just give them a jingle, 205-271-2966, and come on over, up, down, wherever you are on the planet, to Irondale, Alabama. You don't want to miss this place. Well, right now we're going to go straight across the big ocean there to Joan, who is in Rome. Joan, what do you have for us today?
Well, greetings once again from Rome to all of you at home. And you know, I'm very excited about your topic today and your guest about Heartbeat International, because I've been studying its website, listening to what they've said in the past. And you know, they explain that one of their missions is to start and strengthen abortion alternative organizations worldwide. And that's really what I want to focus on. Alternatives to abortion, because actually recent documents from the church have pointed out a magnificent, viable alternative to this, and I'm talking about adoption and foster parenting. Again, you'll find that on the website. Now, in fact, the final report from the 2015 Synod of on the Family, the Synod of Bishops, dedicated an entire paragraph to this, number 65, and that paragraph says, "The choice of adoption and foster care expresses a particular kind of fruitfulness in the marriage experience, beyond cases where infertility is painfully present. This decision is an eloquent sign of welcoming life, a witness of faith, and a fulfillment of love, and restores a mutual dignity to a bond that has been interrupted, and that is children without parents, parents without children. Consequently, says the document, all initiatives aimed at facilitating adoption need to be supported. And you know, we have to go back to a document this year, the Pope's Apostolic Exhortation Amoris Laetitia. And Francis writes, some couples cannot have children. And of course, this is great pain and suffering for them. But he says, adoption is a very generous way to become parents. I encourage those who cannot have children to expand their marital love to embrace those who lack a proper family situation. They'll never regret being generous, he says. Adopting a child is an act of love, offering the gift of a family to someone who doesn't have one. And the Pope really stressed those who gratuitously accept to do this are channels of God's love. That is just so beautiful. Adoption, a new form of life, really beautiful. But time's up, so back to you at home.
Thank you so much, Joan. Another wonderful report there in Rome, speaking about Heartbeat International, visiting your website. Joan was mentioning alternatives, the importance of alternatives, and you're about that. How do women who are contemplating abortion, or post-abortive women, or families thinking about abortion hear about you? How are you trying to reach them? How do they connect?
Well, we have a 24/7, 365 emergency contact center called Option Line, and it's easy to find online, optionline.org. The number is 1-800-712-HELP, and there are folks that are waiting there to answer the very question that you just asked. They don't know where to go, they don't know what to do, and our goal is to answer their initial question, talk to them about their concerns, and help them get connected to the pregnancy help center that's closest to them, that has the service that they're looking for. And that's our connection, and our ability to serve the network as a whole is by helping do this on a nationwide basis all throughout the US and Canada, maybe someday internationally. We do that also through email and whatnot. But the way that they can do that, there's actually several different ways. Phone is the most popular. We answer nearly 700 phone calls every single day. And we also do text, chat, and email. And so there's a variety of ways that you can talk to folks at Option Line. They're there all the time. They're trained in the love approach, and they're there for that very purpose. We have several who've been with us many, many years. One in particular has answered over 210,000 phone calls because we've answered more than 2.5 million of those since the beginning of Option Line in 2003.
And so, you can connect the healing dots for them.
Yes.
Whatever it is that they need. And we have found, even on our website, that the client is shopping if she's considering abortion. She's usually doing that in the wee hours of the morning.
Yes.
And so we have, when our forms come in, it's usually at 2:34 a.m.
Yes.
or 12:30 when she's got on there and she's hit it and she processed it through.
Here's an interesting fact. Our busiest time, we can see it. We know when school ends.
Yes.
That hour between 3 and 5,
Right.
Or after work, we can see when they're getting home at work, and definitely during the evening hours and during the weekend hours,
Yeah.
we can see that, and it's fascinating how it works. Our busiest day is Monday because, hey, the weekend is party time, and Monday we're starting to deal with realities. And so those are the kind of things that we can watch from Option Line, really on behalf of the whole network. We can see things that are happening. We can see trends that are happening at Option Line to really understand. And by the way, some of the understanding regarding who's coming to pregnancy centers, it isn't the 15 and 16-year-old with the ponytail. Okay, it's the 20 to 24-year-olds.
Yes.
It's the 25 to 29-year-olds. And as we delay marriage and family longer, we also see it moving now into the 30 to 35-year-olds.
And our client average age is 19 to 25.
There you go.
And she's 80% of our clients are African American. And believe it or not, now we're really starting to see more married people come, but still wanting abortions.
Yes.
I think the numbers that we have at Option Line are pretty amazing when you consider 700 contacts a day, close to 250,000 a year, and with more advertising, with more support. We do national keyword advertising to get those clients, to reach them and connect them to the local center. We could reach even more. And I think it's amazing that we're estimating over 1 million women a year, and some men, of course, involved in that number, are coming to the Heartbeat network of pregnancy centers in the U.S. Over 1 million. Then you put in all those that we're connecting to help through Option Line. And you realize why, one reason why, the abortion numbers are going down. You know, we are the part of the pro-life movement that works on the demand side of abortion. We try to make sure abortion is unwanted now. And so if we're there when they feel alone, afraid, they don't know what to do, they need a pregnancy test, if there's a local center and Option Line is there, like you say, when they're calling in the middle of the night, Option Line's answering and
Right.
making an appointment at your center so that that girl is not going to waste that call or call an abortion clinic. So Option Line is there in the gap when the local centers can't be, and making sure that more and more women don't want an abortion.
Peggy, Jor-el, Heartbeat International, thank you.
Thank you.
God
Thank
bless you. And God bless you for being a part of this family, the EWTN family. Heartbeat International is here for you. EWTN is here for you. Remember that life, marriage, and the family will prevail. God bless you. Bye now.